Hello, friends, and welcome to the Union Labor Advisory Network. I'm Mike Fina. Today, I'm extremely proud and privileged to be with Benjamin Pomerance, Esquire, Deputy Counsel from the New York State Department of Veteran Services, with us today to learn a little bit more about his background, history, and experience, and some of the services the Department of Veteran Services has to deploy out to our veteran community, as well as when we talk about some of the union labor community that we're working with today. So, Benjamin, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today. Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's an honor to be here and an honor to speak to your audience. You know, the history of American labor and the history of American military service are intertwined in so many ways. And as I work throughout New York State today, I have the great honor of meeting many union members across many different trades and professions who have also served our nation at various levels and in every branch of the United States military. So great to be with you and looking forward to hopefully providing some information and resources that can be useful to your audience who has served this country in military uniform.
Yes, and Benjamin, we got connected through Melanie, Melanie Corinne from out of Suffolk County that got us connected and said we should be talking because there's so much resources that you have that you're looking to deploy or just make people aware of. And as we work within the labor space, the associations, some of the veteran clubs, the unions themselves that have so many different veteran members working within these organizations, just to make sure that they have the resources available. I was like, we needed to get connected. And, Benjamin, for the audience, maybe you could give us a little bit more about your background, how you got started, and a little bit about your career.
Most definitely. So first and foremost, we'll talk a lot today about myths and realities in the veteran services realm. And the biggest myth that's out there is a shortage of veterans benefits. That's not true. Right now, we are at a time of veterans benefits renaissance. There are more veterans benefits, services, programs, and resources now in 2025 than at any previous point in this nation's history. The biggest challenge is one of navigation. A lot of times it can be difficult for a veteran who is returning home or a veteran at any point in their life to figure out which of the various options on the menu is the right option to choose. And how do we navigate through the various things that are out there when you type in veterans benefits into Google or Yahoo or your search engine of choice? And how do you figure out which thing or things are right for you? That's where our New York State Department of Veteran Services comes into play. We are designated by law since 1945, at the end of World War II, as New York State's agency advocating for all veterans, all service members, and all of their members of their family to make certain that they are connected to what they rightfully have earned by virtue of that service. In other words, in plain English, we are that navigator, okay? We are that battle buddy, if you will, to walk with a veteran or a person on active duty or the Guard or the reserves or somebody in their immediate family and connect them to the full measure of what's rightfully theirs and what is best for them at the federal level, the state level, and the local levels. And in so doing, back to myths and realities again, there's a lot of things out there that you might hear, that you might read on social media or elsewhere, or that you might hear through the barracks lawyer hotline or the Lance Corporal hotline, where you say, oh, well, therefore I can't get benefit X. Be careful about that, okay? Literally every day, as recently as about 10:30 this morning, I work with individuals who are veterans who will say to me, benefits because of my service. My service wasn't the right kind of service, or some other variation on that theme. About 90% of the time, the veterans who say that are leaving money on the table for themselves and for their families, not getting what's rightfully theirs, and not getting things that are, this is especially important, they are not a handout, they are an earned benefit earned by those who have raised their right hand, taken that oath, and served this country in whatever capacity they were called to do it in. So my story is kind of unusual in this sense because I am myself not a veteran. I have been a veterans advocate for my entire professional career, but I myself am not a veteran. Back when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my mother took me to see my uncle Robert Needham in court. He was the presiding judge of a family court in Otsego County. And something about the whole scene there appealed to me, and I announced in my squeaky 5-year-old's voice that I was going to be a judge someday like my uncle. He said, well, you have to be a lawyer first. Okay, sure, I'll be that, right? Typical 5-year-old response. Turns out I do wind up, fast forward several years later, applying for and thankfully getting into law school at Albany Law School, Albany, New York. Albany Law School is directly across the street from a VA medical center. And at this point in time, my uncle had unfortunately passed away far too young from a cancer that we now know was likely linked to his exposure to Agent Orange when he was serving boots on the ground in Vietnam with the U.S. Marine Corps. So because he was my initial inspiration from that day in court when I was a young kid to go to law school and pursue a career in the law, I expressed a desire to do something at the law school in conjunction with this VA hospital across the street to give back in my uncle's memory. It turned out the law school at that time was not doing anything in conjunction with the VA hospital. And the statement that was made to me by my parents, I think half jokingly, maybe not, was, well, you'll have to start something. And in my first year of law school, when you're supposed to be doing nothing beyond studying, I did. I founded Albany Law School's first ever veterans' rights pro bono project, which I am proud to say is still flourishing to this day. And that was my first exposure to a couple of things. One, the great desire to serve, the call to serve, if you will, when it comes to representing the interests of veterans and military families. I put out this call to serve as a cold call, literally, to attorneys throughout the Albany area. And before a week was over, I had people writing back to me saying, yeah, I'll volunteer. What can I do to help? What can I do to serve? Some were veterans. Many, like myself, were not. And likewise, at the law school itself, I put out a call to the student body. Hey, anybody want to come join me in this brand new thing? Not exactly sure how it's going to work yet. We're going to build the plane while we fly it. But if you want to come meet in room E117 on 5:30 p.m. on this Thursday evening. And I walked in thinking, this is crazy. It'll be an empty room. And there were 17 students there. Law student schedules are busy, okay? And yet 17 people said, you know what? I'm going to volunteer my time because this is important to me. This is the veterans advocacy space that we're in, that we're talking about today. It is thankfully and rightfully a broad space. It encompasses both veterans and non-veterans. And the entire thing is all based upon a shared mission and a shared desire of service. And one of the most important parts of that service that brings things full circle here today is the education piece, making certain that people know what's rightfully theirs by virtue of their service and knowing what resources are there, like our State Department of Veteran Services, to walk with them on the next steps in their journey.
Benjamin, again, that's a lot, and thank you for educating our group. Excuse me. Losing your uncle to Agent Orange or having that, those particular court cases that there. My father, came across that same thing as a Vietnam veteran, and today when we talk about resources and just knowing how near and dear it is to me and my family as well. When we lost my father during COVID. And he had some of those pre-existing conditions. It was going to the VA hospital for some treatment, and realized it was, a pre-existing condition that may have come from Vietnam. When we lost him, it was labor that took care of my family. The Fort Hamilton Army base in Brooklyn was shut down, but the support that we received, and then, being able to obtain those VA benefits for my mother so that she can have a better quality of life, towards that, now was so meaningful to me. And, again, it's driven me to want to do more, be an advocate for these particular services, because it was only 5 years before my father's death that he take those particular benefits, not realizing coming back from Vietnam had the ability to apply and take advantage of those things. And the money lost, the money put on the table, like you said, that was deserved or accessible to him. It's just, being educated on those particular resources and somebody to help guide them through that particular process, because it is sometimes convoluted. You got to figure out where do you go, who do you contact. And for me, in being able to, communicate and getting the opportunity to meet you is like, how do we share these resources? How do we deploy this information in the best possible way? And I know that you are, have so much information and knowledge to get out to the masses. I'm really excited to be able to work with you, Melanie, and all the other advocates collectively to make sure that we can educate the market, to make sure that these union members also take the best in class, negotiated benefits that they have today, but also take advantage of the veterans benefits that are there for them as well. And when you combine both, that's something that's very, very, I think, a beautiful thing. And we're just trying to work ways to work collectively to be able to send that stuff out. So
most definitely,
I'm really excited to work with you.
Everyone comes to this with sort of a different call to action, but it all boils down to that same spirit of service. In your case, Michael, it goes back to your family, right? As close to home as you can possibly get. And the story that you described of a veteran only beginning to access their rightful benefits late in life is a story that unfortunately we see borne out and that we get deeply involved with and enmeshed with in our Department of Veteran Services literally every day. Okay, just like we always hear about people saying, I'm not a veteran every day, we also encounter veterans who should have gotten benefits long ago each and every day. This year, for example, I won a disability compensation case for a World War II veteran, okay, a bona fide war hero, flew 40 missions over the Pacific theater, okay, in the midst of some of the fiercest combat that the world has ever seen, earned the Distinguished Flying Cross. I won his case on the same day as his 100th birthday.
Wow.
So thankfully, he's still here at the age of 100. He can enjoy those benefits with his family. However, think about all those years, not just years, decades before that he could have been utilizing those benefits that he rightfully earned by what he had done in service to this country. And the parallel that you described is excellent between labor benefits and veterans benefits. Just like in a labor union, when you collectively bargain, when you fight, when you do what needs to be done to get the rights as workers that are rightfully yours, you don't then go and turn those down, right? You fought to get to that point, you earned them, and they're yours. It's the same with veterans benefits, okay? If you trace back the history of veterans benefits in this country, it hasn't always been the way it is today in this time of veterans benefits renaissance. What we have today comes on the backs of many, many generations before, who had to go before Congress, before state legislatures, before governmental and non-governmental entities of every kind, and really fight hard to say, hey, we're here. It's one thing to thank us for our service. It's something else to properly provide compensation, properly provide health care, properly provide employment and educational opportunities, and the whole 9 yards to really put your money where your mouth is if you're saying thank you for your service. So based on that history, based on that legacy of generations of veterans past and military families past fighting to get to this point, don't turn it down. Don't turn your back on it. They're yours. They have been earned by you, just like your labor benefits have been earned by you. Don't leave those on the table because two things happen. One, if government sees benefits not being used, especially in this day and age, what is the response of, say, the United States Congress? Oh, we're looking to cut costs here and there. We're talking about governmental efficiency or whatever else. If benefit X is not being used to its fullest extent, well, let's contract that benefit and decrease the funding pool. So every day, again, another everyday thing, I hear from veterans saying, I'm okay. I have found, a good transition back home. So I'm not going to apply for disability compensation, for example, because I want that money to be left for my battle buddies on my left and on my right, your typical military ethos, right? Here's the problem with that. If too many veterans say that, the pot of money for your battle buddies, in addition to yourself, winds up getting decreased by a government saying, well, if no one's using this, we're not going to keep re-upping that appropriation every year. So while I certainly respect and understand that mindset, of let's leave benefits for the other people. You don't have to do that. The VA has the second largest budget in the entire U.S. government, second only to the U.S. Department of Defense. And so if there are benefits that you've earned, utilize them, and that's going to stimulate the availability of those benefits for your battle buddies in the future as well.
That's great. Thank you, Benjamin. And, when we talk about this, what's the first step? What would somebody do? Like, what's the process? Or in this particular case, as we work with labor unions, what's the best possible next step or ways to get information out to the membership? Obviously social media has a big presence and opportunity, things that we do today, but just things that, we can do as people serving union labor and working with membership organizations as well to be able to get that message out or direct them in the best possible way.
Most definitely. So first off, here's our department's phone number, 1-888-838-7697. So 1-888-838-7697. If you call that number, you will be connected with someone right away. These are not overly long wait times or anything fun like that. And you'll have an appointment established for you with one of our Veterans Benefits Advisors. All of these folks are veterans themselves who have continued their call and their commitment to service by now serving their fellow veterans as subject matter experts in what the official legalese calls the preparation, presentation, and prosecution of claims and appeals. So that means if you need representation in your disability compensation claim, your pension claim, your GI Bill application, if you are the surviving spouse of a veteran who's passed away, there's benefits there that we can advocate for. There's state benefits ranging from extra points on civil service examinations to free admission to New York State parks with a lifetime Liberty Pass, all the way down through everyone's favorite, which is the property tax exemptions. Going to be able to save some money on your annual property tax bill through the assessment of your primary residence. These are all things that we work with day in and day out. If you prefer to not make a phone call, go to www.veterans, that's veterans.ny.gov, veterans.ny.gov. And we have a feature on our state agency's website where you can book an appointment online, again, with a Veterans Benefits Advisor to have this dialogue, have what we call your Veterans Benefits Checkup, and to make certain that you're getting the full measure of what is rightfully yours. All of our services are 100% free, okay? 100% free means there are no hidden fees. There's no hiding the ball. You will not be charged even for a postage stamp. This is literally your tax dollars at work. We are your state agency that serves veterans and military families. And we are where you are, right? We're not just in some ivory tower in the state's capital in Albany, New York. We have more than 60 field offices across New York State. In addition to that, our colleagues in county governments and city governments have their own offices that also do this same type of work free of charge as well. So that phone call or that online booking begins the process, then you're off to the races from there. And again, 100% free of charge. I emphasize that because if you go online, you will find other places that will say, well, if you come to us, we'll help you out for a small fee. Let me tell you, if you see anybody online or any place else that is saying we'll help you for a small fee in the filing of an initial claim for VA benefits, they are breaking the law. They're breaking federal law and state law, okay? Federal law does allow a private entity to charge for appellate work. We'll talk more about that later. So if you're saying the VA got the decision wrong and you're looking to appeal it, a private entity can charge a fee for that. But no one, literally no one, is permitted by federal law, Title 38 of the U.S. Code, to charge even 1 penny to represent a veteran or a veteran's spouse or a veteran's child or a veteran's parent in a claim for any VA benefits if we're talking about an initial claim. So if someone is saying that to you or to your family or your friends, put the brakes on, okay? Report them for doing the wrong thing and breaking federal and state law, and then come to a place that is doing the right thing, that does this work free of charge and says, we're not going to charge you 1 penny for that initial claims advocacy.
But I just want to let you know, I'm going to have my mother make that call with that
There we
phone
go.
number that left us as well.
We'll be standing by.
She's not leaving any money on the table
Absolutely.
to support some of the benefits that she's entitled to. And I know that we're going to make sure that we get this information out to the masses as best we can.
Outstanding. And thank you for that. Thank you for getting the information out.
Yeah. And Benjamin, some of the things that really brought us, together too is, and through, graciously through Melanie, our Connect, one of the programs through the ULA Networks charitable foundation, and one that's near and dear to me is, so that we were introduced to through the New York City Department of Veteran Services, which was the Joseph P. Dwyer Project.
Yes.
And when you look at some of those particular initiatives, in one, being some of the social services or just, bringing people into communities and keeping veterans connected. But one that really stood out to me, working within the building and construction trades market for the past 20 plus years and having such relationships, one was the community construction projects and bringing veterans in to support, revitalizations of communities, properties that need remediation. And it was, an eye opener for me to be able to, touch base with the New York City Department of Veteran Services, collaborate with some advisors within the Department of Veteran Services as well, advocates like yourself, and say, how do we get this off the ground and work with union labor to support veteran members in our communities? And what we've created and we're working on today is the Vets for Vets Community Construction Project,
yes,
which is in line
great.
with the Joseph P. Dwyer Grant's mission to help support these particular initiatives. And as you know, Benjamin, there's programs within, the North American Building and Construction Trades. One initiative is called Helmets to Hard Hats for transitioning veterans, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. But also those members that are working collectively today or in 4-year apprenticeships that do volunteer work, to really bring them out, work with the signatory contractors, look for funding sources to help support these particular initiatives, but work collectively with veterans to help other veterans and help remediate these community projects so that people can have a better quality of life, and really, educate or hopefully inspire those veterans that are living in maybe substandard housing to understand that there is a career, there are opportunities, both in the building trades as well as public work opportunities to help them live a better quality of life, because transitioning back into civilian world is not easy. And in talking to a lot of different veterans within the trades, that's been one of the major issues, transitioning some of their work. And it doesn't really apply to like civilian life. If they were doing, military, missiles on planes and warplanes, how do you transition that into civilian life? But their work ethic, working in teams, there's a lot of similarities. And for me to be able to work in collaboration with the trades, it's really self-fulfilling for me to be able to give back to organizations that have supported my life, my family, and it's just something that I have an extreme passion for. And again, I'm extremely proud to work alongside you in any way I can to support our veterans and the communities in which we live in.
Well, the feeling is mutual. What you're doing, Michael, is number one, inspirational and tremendous. So thank you. And number two is part of a rich and noble tradition in this whole country of the role that veterans have played in those professions that you are describing. Certainly after World War II, there were so many individuals who served in, again, every branch of the U.S. military that was active at that time, who, while they were serving in the Pacific, in Europe, wherever it was they were deployed, learned with some pretty fast and pretty intense on-the-job training in a combat zone, key elements of the construction trades. And so when they came back home, individuals who were in management realized this. And when we look at the revitalization of American cities and the rebuilding of American cities, those are built by veterans, by and large. Veterans who had learned or honed key aspects of their craft in the most difficult and severe conditions imaginable on a multi-front war, and then came back and utilized those same skills for the benefit of their fellow Americans through the construction and building trades and the construction and building careers. And it's been that way ever since, right? And you know better than I do, if you follow that history between that time and the present day, veterans have been the backbone in so many ways of these professions. And so it absolutely makes sense to have those connections with Dwyer, with helmets to hard hats, really with any possible touch points that we all can, to make sure that the individuals who are working within those trades are getting good information, accurate information, and being connected to what's rightfully theirs. Now, one thing I've noticed over the past several years is that there is also a lot of dialogue that sometimes gets filtered down through in those different groups about veterans benefits, veteran services, that is not always accurate and up to date. And I've had the honor of presenting in front of and briefing over the past several years many different union groups. I mean, CSEA, PEF, the FDNY Union, United Steelworkers, and many more. And oftentimes the dialogues that we have are great, and it gives me that chance to try and separate fact from fiction among their members. And so, for example, a couple of things I'll toss out here that I often encounter in those dialogues. We'll try and set the record straight. One, length of time after service. Okay. All the time I hear, well, I'm too old. I'm one of the quote unquote old guys. Therefore, I can't file for disability compensation, or I can't file for pension, or I can't file for whatever. That is not true. Okay. I mentioned before, I won a case this year for a veteran who was 100 years old. He had never filed a claim before. I met him at age 99. He had served in combat in World War II. There is no time limit. I've won cases for World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, many Vietnam War veterans. So there is no limit. I hear, oh, you have only 5 years, you have only 10 years. No, the law does not say that. You can look all day. You will not find that in the law. So I don't care how many years you moved from your time in service you still can file for and get the benefits that are rightfully theirs. Secondly, I filed a claim back in 1999. That claim got denied, and therefore I cannot file again. Not true. Okay, I mentioned before the appellate process, the ability to appeal. That's a right that veterans have, the ability to appeal a decision that they feel was decided erroneously. And if you're on the fence, appeal. Okay, the most recent studies show that the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans Benefits Administration, makes a veteran adverse error in approximately one third of all the cases that they decided. So if you're looking at your decision letter from the VA and you're saying, this is not quite tracking the reality that I knew from my time in service and the injuries or illnesses that I know I incurred during my time in service, file the appeal, okay? And even better, get with our Department of Veterans Services or our county or city partners, and we'll advocate free of charge to get that appeal filed, okay? Because you absolutely have that right to appeal. Even if a lot of time has gone by, you can still reopen the case on the basis of new and relevant evidence to say, okay, VA, maybe back in 1999, we didn't have all the documents in place here to win this case, but you know what? Now we do. Take a second look at it, right? All those options are very much on the table. And then third, the combat versus non-combat myth. I mentioned before, every single day I hear from veterans saying, I'm not really a veteran. The most common thing I hear is, I'm not really a veteran. I didn't go to war. I didn't serve in a war zone. Didn't serve in a combat zone. The United States military's operations and successes are not confined to a combat area. Certainly, we celebrate and honor those who have served in combat, and rightly so. But those are not the only operations in which our military engages. Wherever you served, whenever you served, for however long you served, you are recognized by federal law and state law as being a veteran, okay? Federal law, Title 38, Section 101, subsection 2 of the U.S. Code tells us that a veteran is a person who served in the active military, naval, air, and now space service, and was discharged or released therefrom under conditions other than dishonorable. Nothing in there says you had to have served in combat. Nothing says you had to have served 10 years or 5 years or 1 year. Nothing says you had to have served in a certain occupational specialty or a certain outside the continental U.S. area or anything like that, okay? As long as you were in for at least one day and you wore the uniform of this country and you took that oath and you were discharged or released therefrom under conditions other than dishonorable, you are a veteran, and there may be benefits out there that are rightfully yours that you're leaving on the table. So again, get that veterans benefits checkup and let's find out.
Gotcha. But I mean, you have so much knowledge, and I'm sure this is not the end. I mean, I'm excited to be able to work with you and start to create certain programs, or at least get the information that you have and those particular resources out to the masses the best way we can. And again, I know you'll be in New York, but I'll be heading out to Florida in the next couple of days. You know, our cross will pass, but I'm excited to pass along your message and the resources of the Department of Veteran Services, and make sure that we can create more educational forums to make sure that members are aware of these opportunities and benefits that are available to them. And again, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today to share your information, your inspiration, and your background with our viewers today, because people need to know. And just the information that you shared today, I'm really excited about, because I just want to, like I said, I'm going to call my mother to make sure she calls that 800 number to check up and get that checkup as well, to make sure that she hasn't left anything on the table. So
that's great. That's what we want. The worst it can be is a half hour of your time where you find out, yep, I'm getting everything that is rightfully mine. But I will tell you, those are the minority of the appointments. It is rare that someone does not leave one of our offices or one of our telephone conversations or one of our online appointments without learning about and being connected, or at least beginning the connection with a federal or state or local benefit or resource that they didn't even know existed beforehand. So definitely make that call, have that checkup. And Michael, I'll return the thanks. Thank you for today. And more importantly, thank you for what you are doing every day through this network. The information exchange is so important. The clarifying of reality versus myth is so important. And the population that we are working with here is so extraordinarily important today and to the entire history of this country. I mean, the United States of America would not be what it has been and continues to be without the veterans of this country who have served in our military, and without the American labor movements that have quite literally built this country in so many ways. And there are many people who wear both hats, both the veteran hat and the American labor movement hat. We want to make certain that you get what is rightfully yours, because you have served us, served our country in so many ways. Let us serve you. Again, 1-888-838-7697 or www.veterans.ny.gov. And we'll be standing by and looking forward to your calls or your online appointments, and looking forward to the chance to meet you and to serve you as best we can.
Benjamin, thank you so much. That was the best infomercial right at the end, right there. It's perfect clip.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for the time, and again, look forward to meeting you in person really soon. And again, thanks you for all you do to serve our country and our veterans. Thank you.
And thank you, Michael.
You got it.
I'd like to thank all our sponsors for helping to build and promote the ULA network. It is because of you that we're able to support, educate, and promote informative content relevant to labor. Please subscribe, like, and share our channel and media. I'd like to thank you all for your support.